Hi, everyone. Welcome to another lesson here at Study English. So glad that you are joining us today. And I want to offer a special welcome to those who are watching today on StudyEnglishWithUs.ca. That's a new website that we have recently launched, and right now there's a special offer for you to take advantage of. So be sure and check that out, StudyEnglishWithUs.ca. We've developed this platform so that we can help our students focus on their goals of becoming fluent in English. As you study at our website and soon to be available on your smartphone, you will be able to work on your goals without being distracted by all of those things that can take your attention away over at YouTube. We still love YouTube, but we just wanted to build something better for our students. So be sure and check it out, StudyEnglishWithUs.ca. And soon to be available on your smartphone, an app that you can download from either Apple or Android. So we're very excited about that. All right, today we are going to be launching a brand new series here at Study English, and we're calling it English for Travelers. With all of the COVID restrictions that are being lifted, a lot of people are getting out there again and visiting family and friends that they haven't seen for so many years. And so there's been a real uptick in travel. And so we wanted to prepare a series of lessons, first of all, on how to navigate at the airport. What do you do? If you're flying for the first time, it can be very confusing. All of the steps that you have to follow in order to get on that airplane and fly away to your destination. Now, in the first lesson of this series, I want to first of all talk about getting ready to travel on the airplane. There are a number of things that you should make sure that you have in place before you even get in the taxi to go to the airport. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this lesson, getting ready to travel. Let's get started. The first thing that I would like for us to talk about are documents. Documents. Do you know what documents are? Documents are pieces of paper that have information on them that are important to have with you when you travel. Documents can refer even to your passport, something that's very necessary if you're going to be traveling outside of your country. A passport. I don't think you probably need to learn that word because it seems to be very universal in almost every language. Pasaporte, it's very similar in many different languages. But in case you need to know, it's a passport. That's one of the most important documents that you can take with you. But in addition to the passport, you should also have other identification, like maybe a driver's license, to show maybe a second proof of your identification. And then what are some of the other documents that you should have with you? Well, I like to have a printout of all of the important documents so that I can show to an official in case they ask. Now, these days, most of these things can just be downloaded to your phone. And if someone asks, you can just find the document on the phone and show them, and they can take a look at it and make sure it's okay. But in addition to having everything on the phone, I also like to have the paperwork with me when I go on a trip. And so what are some of the documents that would be important for you to have in your bag? Well, first of all, I like to have the ticket that I've purchased for the flight. The ticket. And if you have worked through a travel agency, you should have a printout of your ticket. They might have emailed it to you, but they've probably also given you a printout. And sometimes you might find that it's necessary to show somebody the actual ticket. And so I like to have a printout. What if you get to the airport and your phone dies? It's good to have the printout of your ticket in case anybody needs to see that. Other documents that you will probably need to have these days especially is your proof of vaccinations. Most of the countries that you might travel to today will want to know whether you've been vaccinated or not. Now, some countries, they're pulling these restrictions, so it's constantly changing, but a good idea is to go to the website of the country that you're visiting to see what their requirements are. Do you have enough vaccinations? Maybe you need to go and get some. If you're traveling to some countries in Africa, you'll need to have a yellow fever vaccination card. And if you're visiting some of these countries, some of them also like you to have a typhoid shot. So be sure and check the website of the country that you're visiting to make sure that you have all of the vaccinations you need. Otherwise, you can have difficulty entering the country. And they might pull you aside and send you to some place to get vaccinated for the specific requirements for the country. So COVID vaccinations, and for some countries, you will also need other vaccinations. I always like to print out the reservations for my hotel that I'm going to be staying at. Often when you arrive at a new country, they will have you fill out a form to give to the customs agent. And one of the questions on the form may be the name and address, maybe even phone number of the hotel that you're staying at. Now, if you are staying with friends, they may also want to have that information. What's the name of your friend where you're staying? What's the address? What's the phone number of your friend? And so be sure you have that information with you, or you might have delays getting into the country when you arrive. Now, the next thing that you need to be careful with and concerned about is, are your documents all in order? And by that, I mean, is your passport valid? When does your passport expire? Some countries like to have a full year showing before your passport expires to let you into the country, or even at the airport before departing on your flight. They may want to make sure that you have a full year left on your passport. So if your passport is about to expire, it's a good idea to get it renewed, get a new one before you travel, so that you don't run into any problems. Now, some of the countries that you are going to possibly travel to will require you to get a visa before you go. And so be sure and check the requirements of the country that you plan to visit. You might have to type in what nationality you are, or look on a big list of countries that they might allow in without a visa. But in most cases, you will need to get a visa to enter a country. And you usually need to do that ahead of time. Now, some countries will let you get a visa on arrival. And but be sure and check that out and be sure that they allow that. Otherwise, when you get to the airport, they won't let you get on the plane. And you can see my passport is just full of visas that I have needed to get to travel to many countries. And so be sure that you have that in order. Get your documents in order. Now, the next thing that we should probably talk about is your luggage. Your luggage. When you purchase your ticket, your travel agent, or if you did it online, will probably tell you how many bags you will be allowed to check on with your ticket. And this is different for every airline and how far you are traveling. If you're going international, it's usually allowed to have 2 check-on bags included in your ticket. But then there are some airlines that are maybe the ticket is cheaper, but they'll charge you extra for the bags. And so it's a good idea when you purchase your ticket to make sure that you are purchasing the baggage allowance for the number of bags that you want to bring so that there's no delays at the airport. The next thing to be concerned about is the weight restrictions. The weight restrictions of the check-on bags that you are bringing. A standard allowance for international flights is 25 kilos per bag, or kilograms per bag. It's a good idea to, as you're packing your suitcase, have a way to weigh it so that you're not overweight. Because at the airport, if your bag is overweight, you either have to pay more or take things out and just throw them away. And you don't want to have to do that. So weigh your bag before you get to the airport to make sure that you are within the allowance of what it says right on your ticket. How many bags and how heavy they can be. Now, just a little tip that I might share with you from my experience as traveling a lot. If you are going to be doing internal flights when you get to your country, the ticket for your internal flight may have a different baggage allowance and weight restrictions than your international flight. And so what can happen is that you pack your bag, it's 25 kilograms, no problem, but then you get to Nairobi in Africa, and you need to take an additional flight inside the country, or maybe to another country on a smaller airline. This has happened to me a number of times. I've packed my bag for 25 kilos, only to find out that the smaller flights inside the region where you're going may only be 20 kilograms and may only allow 1 bag. And so you have to pay a lot of extra money to take your second bag or to pay for the extra weight of your suitcase. So be sure and check out the allowances that are stated on your internal flights or your secondary flights to make sure that you are prepared for those. And a lot of times when you're buying your ticket, you can have your travel agent make sure that you're paying a little extra when you buy your ticket to cover the weight restrictions or the extra bag, so you don't have to worry about it when you get to the airport in Africa. And so that's my little tip. The next thing that we should talk about is your carry-on luggage. In addition to the checked luggage that goes underneath the airplane in the baggage area, you are also usually allowed a carry-on piece of luggage. The thing about the carry-on is it needs to be a small bag. It needs to be able to fit in the overhead luggage area above the seats in the airplane or underneath your seat. And you can also check with the airline and your travel agent to make sure that your suitcase is going to be the right size or smaller. And it's usually stated on the website. This is about the size that I have here that works for carry-on. Any bigger than this and you're going to run into problems. I don't know how many times I've seen people trying to get their big suitcase in the overhead bin and struggling, and it's falling down, and the stewardess has to come along and take their bag and check it anyways. So make sure that your suitcase is the right size for your carry-on. And you don't have to have a carry-on, but it's a good idea, because what happens if your luggage gets lost? And that can happen if you're taking international flights, especially if they're making a connection, maybe two connections. What happens if your bag gets on the wrong belt and doesn't make it into your second flight or second leg of your flight, and you arrive at your destination and there's no bag? Well, it's good to have one carry-on bag that you can put some change of clothes, your medication, your toothpaste, your toothbrush, all of those things that you might need for a day or two until your luggage, your check-on luggage, catches up to you. Now, in addition to having a carry-on piece this size, most airlines will also allow you to take an additional small bag, like for your computer. So something like this size that you can put not only your laptop, maybe a small camera, some snacks, your headphones for listening to music or watching the movie on the airplane, just all those incidentals that you don't necessarily want to be apart from for a couple of days. Also, I should point out that the airlines do not want you to check any type of batteries. And so batteries for your camera, batteries to charge your phone, extra batteries for your laptop, any kind of batteries, they do not want you to check through in your check-in luggage. And so be sure and bring all of your batteries with you, and I would put them in your laptop bag. When I travel, of course, I have a big camera bag. That's my carry-on. And I might put an extra shirt and a pair of pants, some underwear in the big camera bag, and then I have the laptop in the camera as well. The secondary bag that I bring with me is usually full of hard drives and batteries. And sometimes people look at me a little funny because my second bag is just maybe a little bigger than it should be. But they usually let me get away with it. They can tell that I'm a photographer and have to bring all of those batteries with me when I travel. All right, the next thing that I would like to talk to you about and help you get ready for your trip is your power situation. When you travel to another country, they might be working with a completely different electrical system than you have in your country. Now, many of the devices that we carry these days, they have helped you out by making sure that the charging device for these smartphones and cameras, charging batteries for these kinds of things, it will not matter what electrical system you plug it into from around the world. And it will automatically make the adjustments that it needs to so it doesn't damage your equipment. And so that's very nice. But there are other things that people like to travel with that can become damaged or destroyed completely by plugging them in to a different power system. And so you need to be careful to make sure that whatever you're plugging in from home is going to be okay when plugging it into the power system of the country that you're visiting. And you can find out a lot of that information either online or by picking up a travel guidebook like Lonely Planet series, and just check it usually in the very introduction to the country. It lets you know whether your country that you're visiting is on 110 or 220, 240. And just be aware that some of the devices that you plug in could blow up and there'll be smoke everywhere, and your device will be destroyed. Now, in addition to the change in voltage, there's also a change in the design of the plug in many countries. And so it's a good idea to get what's called a power adapter. They're available in most airports. If you can't find one in your town, before you go, just go to a gift shop in an airport and look for a power adapter. And it'll either be a kit with lots of attachments, or it'll be in one big design, and you turn it to get the right plug in for the country that you're visiting, and then you plug in your plug, and it makes the adaptation. What I like to do, because I have so many things that I need to charge when I travel, I've got not only my smartphone, but my laptop and my iPad, and then all sorts of camera batteries that I need to always be charging. And a lot of the motels that I stay at may not have a lot of places to plug in. So I always travel with a big power bar, I would call it. And that way I just need to plug in one with the power adapter. This particular one I bought in Vietnam, so the plug is designed for most outlets, electrical outlets in Vietnam. And many countries have this style. So sometimes when I'm traveling with this power bar, I don't even need the adapter. I can just plug it straight in. But I always like to have the adapter in case the country I visit uses something different. So I plug it into the adapter and then twist the dial on my adapter so I get the right kind of plug for the country that I'm visiting. And one more tip on this is that if you are traveling from a country that uses 110, like we do here in Canada or the United States, and you're traveling to a country that uses 220 or 240, it could be that your power bar that you bought in Canada or the United States may not be rated for the 240. And so it's a good idea, as soon as if you need something like this, as soon as you get to the country, go to the local market and buy one that is rated the 240 or for whatever voltage in that country. And then you don't have to worry about your power bar blowing up, right? Smoke everywhere. And then you're out of a way to charge everything. So that's a tip that I have learned from all of my travels. One last tip that I would like to share with you in this lesson, and that is be sure that you allow enough time to get to the airport. You may have spent thousands of dollars on your ticket, on your flight, and the last thing that you want to do is arrive at the airport so late that you can't get past the check-in counter. Maybe the agents have even gone if you're really late, because there's lots of things that you need to do at the airport these days. You have to go through the check-in counter, and then security, maybe customs and immigration, and make your way maybe a large distance to your gate. And so you want to be sure that you're there in plenty of time. What happens if there's a traffic jam between your house and the airport and you get stuck in traffic? So I always say that it's better to go to the airport very early and wait there than be caught in traffic and miss your flight. I've traveled now for about 35 years, and I've only missed one flight. And that was because of a big rainstorm. I was in Bangkok, and I was shopping. I had I think it was almost an 8-hour layover in Bangkok. So I said, I'll go in and do some shopping. and I didn't allow enough time to get back to the airport, and there was a big rainstorm, and the taxi driver got caught in traffic, and I missed my flight. And so it taught me, it reinforced the lesson of how important it is to allow enough time to get to the airport, because it can cost you a lot of money to rebook your ticket, and you don't want that. All right, well, that's our lesson for today. I hope that you learned some new terms and that you picked up a few tips about all of those things that you should do to make sure that you are ready for your trip. And be sure and come back. Our next lesson will be what to do when you arrive at the airport. How do you get through the check-in counter? The check-in counter. And we'll go through all of those terms that you will need to know in English of how to get past that check-in counter. And so we'll see you next time here at Study English for more tips, tricks, and terms that you need to know for your next travel adventure. So long for now.